A coming-of-age movie focuses on youth, growth, and maturing, following a central character as they transition into the next stage of their life. These films typically highlight major shifts or milestones in a character's life as they navigate new challenges. When we think about girlhood and coming-of-age stories, titles like Mean Girls, 10 Things I Hate About You, or Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants often come to mind, and those are all great movies, but as a Black girl, my perspective is a little different. My name is Lisette, and welcome to Set in Perspective, where I talk about random things. When I reflect on the girlhood films that shaped me, the stories that resonate most deeply aren't always on those popular lists. Recently, I've noticed some criticism on X and TikTok of the Black girlhood films I hold close to my heart, mainly because they don't focus on the simple and joyful aspects of life. It's true that Black girlhood on screen feels inseparable from trauma, but as someone who's experienced trauma in my own life, I can't help but wonder, can't these stories simply reflect real life nuances? Could centering joy, exploration, and love create more balanced narratives, or is trauma an essential element of Black girlhood coming of age films? In this video essay, I'll explore what makes 3 Black girlhood films my favorites and what I think of their protagonists. I'll also share 3 pivotal moments in each story that shape the characters' journeys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me your favorite Black girlhood films for a future episode. We are going to start out with Crooklyn, Troy Carmichael. Spike Lee's film, Crooklyn, I believe through the eyes of his sister, released in 1994, is a coming-of-age story set in 1970s Brooklyn. It follows Troy Carmichael, a young girl growing up in a lively household with 4 brothers. That summer proves life-changing for her family as they navigate financial struggles, their parents' strained relationship, and the stress of their mother, played by the iconic Alfred Woodard. Troy is tough, observant, and full of personality. From the start, I just loved her. She reminded me of my mom, who also grew up in the 70s and shared stories about watching Soul Train, playing double dutch, and eating tomatoes with salt. Seeing childhood photos of my mom fills me with a bittersweet longing for that simplicity, and Troy evokes the same feeling of innocence mixed with complexity. Some of the scenes in Crooklyn that define girlhood to me are as follows. Troy's overall portrayal. Despite being called nosy, Troy isn't portrayed as overly mature. She's just a girl navigating her femininity, nicknamed Troy the Boy and teased by her brothers about her flat chest. These are insecurities that resonate with many young girls. I hated that a lot of it was coming from her older brothers. As someone who was the youngest and had a very different relationship with my own brothers, they were very loving and protecting. But her oldest brother was particularly cruel at times, but he was often held accountable by their mom, who constantly reminded him to set a better example. Overall, I just loved Troy's personality. She was so smart, and it seemed like she knew more than an 8-year-old or 10-year-old. I don't know her exact age, but she seemed like she knew more than the average kid. Another moment in the story was her trip to Aunt Song's house. So at one point in the story, the electric in their apartment goes out and all of the kids are suddenly being dropped off at members of their family's house. So Troy is going to her Aunt Song's house, I believe somewhere in the South. I don't know exactly where. I think Virginia. I could be wrong. But staying with Aunt Song highlights Troy's identity and roots. When Aunt Song tries to comb out and remove her beads, Troy resists. And this is a moment that asserts her pride in who she is and where she comes from. She was still her little bad self despite the new rules she was under. She would break the rules. She would do little sneaky things, which I thought was so funny how she influenced her cousin. But she was under a lot of stress, and overall, I think she handled the transition very well. Being dropped off, not knowing when they're going to come back to get you, I could just imagine how, abandoned she felt. The third moment in the story that I resonated with was losing her mom. So this heartbreaking moment forces Troy to grow up quickly. Left at Aunt Song's house with no explanation, she feels abandoned and must grapple with grief of losing her family and sense of normalcy. When she's about to return home, she finds out that her mom is sick and she ends up passing away. And when she returned home, she had to immediately step into the caretaker role for her brothers. This is what made this the coming of age film for me. Although she didn't grow up into adulthood, she still did in a sense because the loss of her mother forced her to grow up. Just seeing her combing her little brother's hair the same way that her mother combed hers, it was just very heartbreaking to me. Now we're going to move on to Just Another Girl on the IRT with Chantel Mitchell. So Just Another Girl on the IRT, released in 1992, tells the story of 17-year-old Chantel Mitchell, a smart and ambitious teen from Brooklyn, determined to escape her circumstances. She dreams of becoming a doctor and lifting her family out of poverty. This film feels timeless. Chantel's confidence and swagger as a 1990s teen, complete with such an amazing soundtrack. I still try to find these songs on streaming, YouTube, and some of them I just cannot find. So if you know where I can find the soundtrack from Just Another Girl on the IRT, please point me to that soundtrack because I need it so bad. Chantel's know-it-all attitude sometimes rubs viewers the wrong way, but we have to remember that Chantel narrates the story, so we're seeing the world through her eyes at 17. She believes she has it all figured out, and her ambition is admirable. Things take a turn when Chantel meets Tyrone, a charming but irresponsible young man who ultimately changes her life. Their relationship leads to an unplanned pregnancy, and Tyrone is furious. And while Chantel agrees to the abortion at first, she instead uses the money for a shopping spree. She hides the pregnancy, staying in denial until the dramatic climax where she gives birth at Tyrone's house. 3 of my favorite parts of the movie, the first one being dumping Gerard and giving in to Tyrone's pressure. Gerard could have very well been a great guy, but when he asked, "What do he got that I don't?" the answer was a Jeep. Chantel followed the money, the flashiness, and bad boy aura that Tyrone gave. You see her go from sneaking around in some kind of laundry room, Gerard, to being in a room in a bed at Tyrone's house. Her decision to be intimate without protection is a moment that changes everything. It's heartbreaking because despite her intelligence, she's still a vulnerable teen making impulsive decisions. You want to be a doctor, but you're having unprotected sex. Second, the conversations with her friends. Her friend Natette was a trip who was always giving Chantel bad advice. Chantel was out with Natette, and she actually saw an old friend of hers on the train who was pregnant, and Chantel judged her. It really showed her immaturity and lack of empathy. Her fear of becoming a statistic blinds her to life's unpredictability. The irony that she was having unprotected sex while judging another teen mom was definitely something. Third is the birth scene. Chantel gives birth alone in Tyrone's room after hiding the pregnancy from everyone in her life. Tyrone actually does a great job during this, considering the fact that he rejected having the baby in the first place. He makes sure that she has a safe delivery despite how chaotic the environment was. And all of a sudden, Chantel desperately asks him to get rid of the baby. This moment reflects the raw fear and denial that she felt with this unplanned pregnancy. So though it was shocking, it's an honest portrayal of an extremely life-altering event. Chantel doesn't fully grow up until she confronts her mistakes. While some may judge her harshly, I empathize with her story and the challenges she faces as a Black girl trying to balance ambition and reality. All in all, Chantel could have made better decisions, but these are the type of things you watch coming up. I watched this movie and I made sure not to make the same mistakes that she did. Now, Love and Basketball, Monica Wright. So Love and Basketball, released in 2000, tells the story of Monica and Quincy, childhood friends bonded by their shared love of basketball. Over time, their relationship evolves from rivalry to romance as they pursue their dreams of playing professionally. However, ambition, personal struggles, and diverging priorities test their love. Monica's story is unique because she comes from an affluent background and her challenges aren't rooted in poverty but in societal expectations. Her mother, Camille, played by Free Water, again, she's such an icon, values traditional femininity and disapproves of Monica's athletic ambitions. Their strained relationship highlights generational differences as Monica rejects traditional gender norms. Some of my favorite scenes was the entire childhood part. Monica's first basketball game with Quincy establishes their dynamic. She acts like she's a boy, and then they find out she's a girl. They doubt her skills, but she impresses him with her basketball, proving that girls can hold their own in a male-dominant space. She even said that she'd be the first woman to play in the NBA. And me as a child believed her because I didn't even think that there was a WNBA at the time. Like, I had never seen a game at that point. So, yeah. The second would be Monica's first romantic moment with Quincy. This moment was tender and unforgettable, set to Maxwell's This Woman's Work. When I rewatched the movie as I got older, I would always replay that part, just imagining what my first time would be like. Spoiler alert, it was nowhere near that romantic, but the vulnerability and care in that scene captured everything that was just building up since their childhood. She even said, like, I loved you since I was 11 years old. So this had been, they had been wanting to do this, not wanting to do that specifically, but their love had been brewing for a long time, and it was just so amazing to see it play out that way after the dance. And then lastly, the Play Me For Your Heart scene. So Monica's emotional one-on-one basketball game with Quincy is a raw confrontation of their love and connection. It's one of the most iconic moments of the film. I have my own feelings about the game. I thought that he should have let her win if he loved her, but that's just me. Ultimately, Monica achieves her dream of playing in the WNBA with Quincy as her supportive partner. The final shot of Monica on the court with Quincy and their child watching beautifully symbolizes the balance between love, family, and personal fulfillment. These films resonate because they show that growing up isn't always lighthearted milestones. It's also about facing struggles that shape who we become. By embracing these challenges, coming-of-age films become impactful and relatable. I learned so much from Troy, Chantel, and Monica's journeys, and I hope you revisit these films with fresh eyes. Let me know your favorite Black girlhood movies in the comments, and I'll feature them in a future episode. Thank you.